I used to work at a gas station, and this incident happened right at the start of January, just after the holidays. Around here, that time of year gets brutally cold. I was on a late shift that night. Not a full overnight, but I think my schedule went until about 3 a.m. It was snowing lightly, but the wind made it feel much worse, around 10 degrees. Even standing outside for a few minutes felt unbearable. Because of the weather, barely any customers showed up. Then around midnight, a man suddenly walked into the store. It startled me because I hadn't heard any car pull in. He didn't come far into the store. He just stood by the entrance. I greeted him. He gave me a slight smile and a nod, but didn't say much. He just stood there, staring out through the glass door. I glanced outside too, and realized there were no cars. That meant he had walked there. "How's it going tonight, sir?" I asked casually. He replied that he was okay, just trying to stay warm while waiting for someone to pick him up. I told him he was welcome to wait as long as he needed. I didn't fully get his situation, but I let it go. I kept myself occupied, restocking shelves, tidying up. But an hour passed, and the guy was still standing there, in the same spot, just staring out the door. I asked if he wanted to use the phone or needed help calling someone. He just shook his head and kept waiting. It was weird. I mean, yeah, it was freezing, but something about this was off. Walking to a gas station in that weather? From where? Eventually, I went back behind the counter. I didn't know what else to say. I spent another 30 minutes zoning out and checking my phone now and then. Suddenly, he stood a bit straighter and turned his head to look at me. There was something off in his eyes, like dull and lifeless. It instantly gave me a bad feeling. Just as I was about to ask if everything was okay, headlights shone through the window. A car pulled up right in front of the store, but no one got out. I looked back at the man. He was still staring right at me. Then, without a word, he opened the door and walked out toward the car. The driver rolled the window down, and instead of getting in, the two just stood there, talking for a while. Something in my gut said this wasn't right. It felt like they were planning something. I didn't want to wait and find out. I walked quickly to the door and locked it. Right away, the guy whipped his head around toward me. He rushed back and started pulling on the handle, trying to get in. Then the driver stepped out and did the same. They both looked angry. I ran back to the counter and called the police, hoping they didn't have anything to break the glass with. Thankfully, as soon as they saw me making the call, they gave up, got back in the car and drove off. I never saw them again. They were never found. But whatever they were planning that night, I'm sure it wasn't anything good.
It felt like just another normal winter night. I had come home from work, made myself some dinner, and went to bed like usual. It was snowing outside, quiet and peaceful. Sometime deep into the night, I woke up to a sound, a long, low creak. It was sharp, like wood groaning under pressure. Could have been the roof or maybe the floorboards. I thought it might be from a leak somewhere. I wasn't too worried, but I knew I wouldn't get back to sleep unless I checked. So I got up. I didn't bother turning on any lights. Figured I'd just take a quick look and go back to bed without waking myself up too much. I walked lazily into the hallway and opened the door to the spare room, the one filled with some workout equipment. I looked up. No signs of water damage. The ceiling looked fine. I couldn't even hear much wind outside. Curious, I walked over to the window and gently pulled the curtain aside. It was still snowing, but lightly. Nothing crazy. I started thinking maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe that noise wasn't as loud as I'd imagined. Still, since I was already up, I figured I'd check one more room before heading back to bed. I opened the next door and again glanced up at the ceiling. Everything seemed fine, until I stepped forward and felt something cold and wet under my foot. The carpet. It was soaked. I looked up again, assuming there must be a leak above. But nothing. No visible damage. Confused, I flipped on the light. That's when I noticed it. There were several wet spots across the carpet, maybe a dozen, all in a line, leading from the window to the hallway door. I slowly stepped back out into the hallway. The wet spots continued, leading all the way down the hallway and right into my bedroom. My heart was racing. I looked into the room I had just left, and those footprints went even farther inside, straight toward where my bed was. I didn't wait to find out more. I rushed to the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and left the house. By the time a police officer came to check the place, no one was there. Maybe whoever it was had already left by the time I'd woken up. But the thought that someone might have been standing in my room while I was asleep, it still makes my skin crawl. And the weirdest part, when I first got out of bed, I didn't step in any wet spot, which means they may have entered my room after I left it to check the window. I don't know if that thought makes things better or worse. Whatever I heard, that creak, it was probably the window being opened or closed. I don't know what they were doing there, or what might have happened if I hadn't woken up, and I guess I never will.
I'm 28 years old and live in a quiet house in a typical suburban neighborhood, but right behind my backyard, there's this massive forest that stretches for miles, dense, dark, and barely explored. There's a small walking trail that runs near my place. I like taking walks there whenever I have time, usually at night when it's calm and no one else is around. I just throw on my coat, strap a headlamp on, and go. One night around 8 p.m., I headed out like usual. The air was cold but not freezing. Everything was still, just the sound of my footsteps on the trail. But a few minutes in, I heard something. It was faint, like movement coming from deeper in the woods. I paused. Out in the trees, there was someone. It looked like a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They were just standing there, not too far but far enough that I couldn't see their face clearly. What was a kid doing out here, alone, at night? "Hey, you okay?" I called out. No answer. I pointed down the trail. "The way back is this way." The kid didn't move. I stepped off the trail, carefully, and called out again. Still nothing. I didn't want to leave and risk something happening to them, but something already felt off. I walked a little closer, trying to keep my voice calm and encouraging. That's when they started walking, not toward me, but backing away slowly. Not like they were scared, more like they wanted me to follow. And I did. I don't know why I didn't think harder about it in the moment. I just kept thinking, if this kid's lost, they need help. They led me deeper and deeper into the woods, into an area I'd never gone before. It was completely unfamiliar, completely dark, and completely silent. That's when the kid disappeared behind something. It was a shed. An old, decaying wooden structure standing in the middle of nowhere. I'd never seen it before, and it didn't belong to anything nearby. It looked abandoned. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy ones. They were coming from the opposite side of the shed, someone bigger, someone I couldn't see. Every part of me screamed run. I turned off my headlamp and sprinted back through the woods, retracing my steps to the trail, and finally back home. My chest was pounding the whole time. I called 911. There were no reports of any missing kids, but an officer agreed to check it out with me. The next day, I took him back out to where the shed was. Nobody was there. Weeks passed, and I started to let it fade from my mind, until I heard something on the local news. Turns out, the city sent a team out to tear down that shed. It wasn't supposed to be their illegal construction on public land. But while they were tearing it down, they found something. Something that connected to an old kidnapping case. They never released details, just vague statements and a lot of silence. I still don't know what was hidden inside that shed, or who the footsteps belonged to that night. Or worse, who that child was. Sometimes I wonder if I really saw a kid that night, or something else entirely. And honestly, I still can't decide what's scarier.
This happened a few winters ago. I was working from home as a customer service rep, and my shift that night was from 4 p.m. to midnight. I went up to my home office, shut the door behind me, and got to work at my desk. The first few hours were uneventful. I handled tickets, took my dinner break around 8, then came back to finish off the shift. It slowed down a lot after that. I was mostly sitting there, staring at the screen, waiting for something to come in. And then, out of nowhere, I heard something. A loud noise, somewhere behind me, from somewhere else in the house. I took off my headphones and paused. It didn't happen again. I figured it was nothing, a creaky floor, maybe a wind gust. I couldn't leave my desk for long anyway, so I just opened the office door and sat back down. Nothing else happened for a while. Hours went by, quiet again. But then, around 11:30, near the end of my shift, I heard something else. This one wasn't loud, but it was different, softer, more deliberate. It gave me a weird gut feeling, like something was wrong. I got up and stepped into the hallway, and instantly, Frante. At the far end of the hall, the door was wide open. That door was never open. I just stood there, stunned, trying to make sense of it. And then I saw movement, a shadow, on the wall, shifting ever so slightly. There was someone standing at the bottom of the stairs. I couldn't see their face, just a dark figure in the hallway, perfectly still. I backed up slowly into the office, locked the door, and grabbed my phone. I was shaking as I called the police, trying to keep my voice steady, staring at the bottom of the door, half expecting to see feet appear there at any moment. But I never heard footsteps. No creaking, no movement. And when the cops arrived a few minutes later, no one was there. They searched the whole place. Nothing. No signs of forced entry, no explanation. But the most disturbing part, that door to my office had been open. Whoever was down there had walked right past me. I must have been sitting there, working, totally unaware, with my headphones on, while someone was moving through my house. Maybe even watching me. I still don't know how they got in, or what they wanted. And honestly, that's what makes it so hard to move on.
When I was younger, my friends and I enjoyed exploring abandoned places across the country. The main reason we did it was for the thrill to see what these forgotten places looked like, years after they were left behind by their previous owners. One day, after school, my friend Noah told me he had discovered an old abandoned ranch just outside town. Along with Noah and one other friend, who I'll refer to as Tony for privacy reasons, we planned to visit the place later that afternoon, after dark, to avoid being spotted. For some background, Tony has always been the type to cause trouble at abandoned buildings, breaking windows, spraying graffiti, and even tearing down doors. We didn't pay much attention, since most of these buildings were already in ruins by the time we explored them. As the sun began to set and darkness enveloped the area, we drove to the ranch and parked a few hundred feet away, ensuring that no one would connect my car to us if we were seen coming or going. To get onto the property, we had to climb over a 7-foot fence that surrounded the ranch. Tony brought along some wire cutters to make a hole in the fence, hidden by the surrounding forest. After cutting through, we squeezed through and entered the property. The first thing we saw was a large, decaying house, roughly 70 to 80 feet away from where we entered. Next to the house was a small wooden barn that appeared to be over 200 years old. It was disturbingly eerie to look at, but the house was a different level of creepy. All the windows on the ground floor were boarded up, and the windows on the second floor were shattered. Vines had overgrown the interior, almost as if they were consuming the house itself. The front door was also boarded up and nailed shut, so there was no way to enter through there. Noah signaled for us to come over to the side of the house, where there was a window that wasn't boarded up. It looked like it led to a basement. Tony grabbed a rock and smashed the window, then crawled inside. Noah and I exchanged uncertain glances, but decided to follow him in. Once inside, the first thing that hit us was the smell. I won't say it smelled like a dead body, but the odor was unbearable, like a mix of rotting flesh and sour milk. There was barely any light, just the dim glow from the moon shining through the broken window. We found a staircase leading upstairs. Each step creaked heavily under our weight. The staircase led us directly into the living room, where most of the furniture appeared old and destroyed. There was a large sofa in the center of the room, the type that's placed on stilts, and next to it, a staircase leading to the second floor. The house was dark, since the ground floor windows were all boarded up. As we explored the room, the place had a strange vibe, like someone was still living there. Black and white photographs hung on the walls, most of them depicting a family we assumed were the previous owners. What made the pictures eerie was that no one in them was smiling. They were all staring at the camera with empty expressions. While Tony and I were inspecting the pictures, Noah wandered off into the dark corners of the room. He must have lost his footing because suddenly a glass object fell and shattered on the floor. The sound was chilling, and we froze. Less than 5 seconds later, my worst nightmare began. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as we heard footsteps coming from upstairs, right above us. We all stared at each other, fear evident on everyone's face. I could feel panic rising, and I quickly shoved Noah and Tony towards the sofa. We crawled under it, but there wasn't enough space for all three of us. Tony had to find another hiding spot. There was a tall cupboard next to the staircase that led to the second floor. He squeezed inside just as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Noah and I lay side by side under the sofa, his breathing heavy and panicked. I put my hand over his mouth, trying to keep him quiet. The creaks of the floorboards as the footsteps descended sent chills down my spine. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped directly in front of the sofa. The silence was deafening. It felt like an eternity before the most horrific scream I've ever heard shattered the quiet. Noah was dragged from under the sofa, his scream sending me into a state of shock. I scrambled to get up, and as I did, I saw the man who had grabbed him, a disheveled man with a rough beard. I could barely make out any other features because of the low light. The man was pulling Noah upstairs as he screamed for help. Tony crawled out of the cupboard, and in a panic, I grabbed a shard of glass from the broken object on the floor. I ran upstairs and stabbed the man's arm. He screamed in pain and let go of Noah. We ran downstairs, heading for the basement, hoping to escape. The window out of the basement was too high, so we helped each other climb up. Tony and I pushed Noah up first, then I helped Tony. Just as Tony crawled out, I heard footsteps rushing down the stairs towards the basement. I leaped up, grabbed Tony's hand and scrambled for the window. The basement walls were wet and slippery, making it hard to climb. I screamed for Tony to pull me up as I heard water splashing behind me. The man was charging towards me. Just as I was halfway through the window, I felt his hand on my ankle. The fear was indescribable as he yanked me back into the basement. I kicked out and struck him in the face, and he finally let go. I managed to crawl out, and we ran across the ranch towards the hole in the fence. As we escaped and reached my car, I glanced back towards the house. In the upstairs window, I saw the man watching us. We sped off, never looking back. It's been over 6 years since that night, and we've never gone back. To this day, we still wonder, why was someone living in an abandoned, boarded-up ranch? And what were his intentions with us?